The thing I bought to help me breathe was secretly making it worse than cigarettes ever did. Now, I'm guessing that you remembered. I told you that I used to be a smoker, like a 2-pack a day smoker for years. Not anymore. That's several decades ago. But here's a story. The thing is, every visit to the doctor, I was bracing myself for an ultimatum. I mean, you kind of know that cigarettes are not good for your health, but for people to tell you, you kind of dismiss it. I know it's unhealthy. I'm going to keep doing it. And then it's doctor time, and you're wondering, am I going to get some news? Some sort of pre-issue, or maybe as a scare, a moment that will force my hand to make a decision. And it never came up. And that little quiet, I think the doctor kind of said some things like, maybe you should consider backing away from it, cutting down or something like that. But just not getting any strong advice that says you've got to have a hard stop here or else, my brain's hearing that as permission to keep going. My lungs, they started paying the price anyway. Bronchitis shows up. I don't know if you've ever had that. It can make your lungs feel rather heavy and hard to breathe. And so as I'm trying to be active, more active, and start exercising, I'm finding myself, my gosh, I've got to have something to help me breathe to get through this bronchitis stuff. But I'm still smoking. So here's the weird story. I found an over-the-counter inhaler at a drugstore. It was actually even on the counters at our grocery store. And that inhaler was supposed to open up the airwaves enough to feel better. So if I'm feeling better, well, of course I'm going to smoke without feeling like I'm struggling through it. At one point, I was buying the largest container of that mist. That's crazy. So today I want to share with you what I found out about the inhaler. And before we get into all this great stuff, I do want to say, and you may know somebody, it might not be you, but you may know somebody that's really considered podcasting. You've watched or listened to my podcast over the years. And sometimes people are like, I thought about starting a podcast. Who would ever listen to my story? And I hear that over and over and over again. I mean, I've been doing Power Blast podcast since 2007. Okay. So almost 20 years there. I started podcasting a couple of years prior to that. So trust me, that doubt, it can fully go away, but that it does linger on. So I'm running something called a 5-day podcast sprint, and it's August 17th, so it's starting soon, August 17th to the 21st, where you start the week with your stories. I'm going to help you with my message mining method, and you're going to start the week with your stories, end it with your show. So if you'd like all the details on that, you can head over. I'm going to put that in the lower third here if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, you can catch the show notes on the audio or just listen up. And remember, you can go over to worldclasspodcaster.com/sprint. That's one way, worldclasspodcaster.com/sprint. Or you can text the word sprint to 208-400-5095. Once again, that's texting the word sprint to 208-400-5095. All right, let's get into this other stuff. What's stopping cold here? And I hope to see you over in our podcast sprint. That'll be really cool. So eventually, I learned that I go in, and I think I was going to get some allergy shots or something like that. And the lady's like, well, we got to get rid of your asthma first. And I'm like, oh, I don't have asthma. She goes, oh, yes, you do. And, I'm like, well, gosh, it shouldn't be that way. I've been doing this inhaler. And she's like, oh, that stuff's actually worse than the smoking. I was blown away when I heard that. I was making it worse while I thought I had found the solution. That hit me hard. Now, I didn't go and do any research on it to find out how legit that was. She just kind of said it in passing. So what I decided to do, I'm getting the shot stuff, and I'm like, I'm quitting. I decided to quit now. I decided to quit lots of times and dabbled in taking action, and I always got back on the habit. When I actually committed to quitting, it was brutal. My brain kept telling me it wouldn't work. The withdrawal stuff, oh my gosh, it would hit in waves. Cravings would not let up. And there were moments when I genuinely didn't feel like myself. I'd go to volleyball and play, and I'd feel really disoriented. I leaned in on gum and candy to get me through the worst of it. Eventually, the cravings, they loosened their grip and stuff like that. So the part I wanted to be honest about was quitting smoking didn't automatically fix everything. Old habits found new outlets. So the weight, it kept creeping on. I had to deal with that separately years later. And I'm still on my own project, Solving one problem didn't hand me a finished, perfect life. It meant I was finally done dealing with the real problem instead of a workaround that was quietly making things worse that I really didn't know. So that part really kept coming back to me. Sometimes the things that you're using to cope with a problem isn't actually solving it. It makes the problem maybe tolerable, maybe enough to avoid the real decision. That inhaler, it let me keep smoking longer than I probably should have. Okay. And it actually took learning about the truth to finally force the real choice, right? So you don't need to have the whole thing figured out to make one honest decision. Sometimes that one decision is the only thing that actually needs to happen. You've got this, my friend. I'd love to hear your top takeaway from today. If you've had one of those issues come up before, maybe it's not smoking, maybe it's something else, maybe it was a big aha, drop those down in the comments. I promise I will reply, and I look forward to reading every one of those. You absolutely rock, my friend. And as always, remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week. That's another Power Blast podcast in the books. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, when you are ready to recharge your battery, make sure you go to talktoperry.com. That's talktoperry.com. That's Perry. And I want to listen. I want to hear, what's going on. I want to help you in that 15-minute call to recharge your battery and reclaim your power so that you're off and running and creating massive momentum toward your dream. Also, every day I am delivering more motivation, support, tips, and strategies inside my free community with amazing people like yourself. And we are conquering the mindset and the fitness. I do 52 weeks of free training in there. Plus, I coach and I mentor people, as well as give you access to tons of resources and guides. It's called my Upside Down Fitness community because we work on a lot of mindset stuff, the inside stuff. And we're a fun group of people striving to make healthier habits in this awesome chapter of life. So make sure you get in there. I promise you'll absolutely love it. Just head over to upsidedownfit.com and you can get into the group. And hey, you would be an awesome friend if you get over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave an honest rating and review for the Power Blast podcast. It helps awesome people like you find this show even faster, and that's who I'm looking for, awesome people like you. That's all I have for this week, my friend, and just to let you know, you absolutely rock. That's all I have for this week. I'll see you on the next Power Blast podcast, and always remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week.